In books about war, there is always room for heroism, epic battles, and great deeds. But that's a lie for those who have never slept on rotting straw, never eaten moldy bread, never picked worms out of their own wounds, and never watched a friend die for a sip of water. There is no romance here. Here, there is only filth, cold, and constant fear. You are not a hero. You are expendable, a mercenary whose life is worth less than a dirty coin. But before you get comfortable, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always interesting to see who's joined us. Now, make yourself comfortable. We're beginning. You do not remember exactly when you first heard the word mercenary. It might have been when the neighboring village burned and a group of armed men rode through your own, demanding bread and coins. You were only a child, and to you, all men with swords looked like knights from the old tales. But these were not noble knights. They stank of sweat, sour ale, and something darker you could not name back then. You grew up in mud. Your village was not the poorest, but it was close. You spent your days picking stones from the field, scraping dried dirt from under your nails, and hoping you would not get sick or cold or simply too hungry. Hunger was the first lesson. You learned that there are different kinds of hunger, some that pinch and pass, and others that gnaw for days, leaving your bones hollow and your skin yellow. Your parents, if you had the time and reason to remember them, were simple folk. They were broken by life long before you even began to understand what that meant. You watched as the world wore them down, one lost crop at a time, one winter at a time, one failed hope at a time. There were no dreams in your house, only survival. You did not imagine you would leave, but you knew you could not stay. One night, a band of mercenaries arrived. Their boots trampled the cabbage patch, their horses drank from your well. The village elders protested, but nobody listened. You watched the way these men carried themselves, not proud or noble, just tired, dirty, and watchful. You recognized something in them, hunger, but not the kind you knew. This was a hunger for coin, for something to fill the emptiness left by too many choices and too few options. You tried to run from them at first. You had heard stories, mercenaries who took children to serve as squires or worse. But they did not want you for your innocence or your potential. They needed bodies. Anyone who could walk, hold a stick, and follow orders. You were not special, you were simply there. That is all it takes. There is no dramatic moment of decision, no burning passion or sudden hatred. You leave because there is nothing left to stay for. The fields offer only stones, your house offers only cold, and your village has already forgotten your name. You are not missed. You walk for days, trailing behind the band. They do not encourage you. They do not speak to you. You learn quickly that the world is vast and cold, and your feet are not ready for it. Blisters, sores, and the relentless ache in your belly become your constant companions. Sleep does not come easily. Every sound at night is an enemy, every shadow a threat. Your first real lesson is that the world does not care about you. The older mercenaries are not mentors. They are not interested in your story or your pain. They laugh when you stumble, curse when you complain, and hit you when you are too slow. You learn to keep your mouth shut and your head down. Survival, again, is the only rule. Days blur into weeks. You march, sleep under trees, eat whatever is thrown your way, often moldy bread or half cooked scraps of meat. You learn to beg, to barter, to steal. Dignity disappears. It is just another thing you cannot afford. There is no glorious training montage. The weapons are old, often broken. You are handed a staff, not a sword. Swords are for those who can pay or those who can kill for them. You practice swinging, blocking, stabbing, all under the indifferent eyes of men who care more about their own problems than your technique. You are bruised, bleeding, and utterly alone. It is not long before you see death. The first skirmish is a mess. Chaos, screams, steel, blood, mud, piss. The smell is worse than anything you have ever known, like rotten meat and burning hair and fear. You do not kill anyone. You are too scared, too slow, but you watch someone die. A man not much older than you takes an arrow to the throat. He gurgles, flails, then is still. The others do not stop. They step over him and keep fighting. Later, you see his body in a ditch, picked over for anything of value. No one remembers his name. That night, you try to sleep, but the images will not leave you. You think about going home, but you know there is no home to return to. You are part of the band now, whether you want it or not. You realize this is not a life anyone chooses, it is a life that happens to you. You look around the campfire, see the other faces, some as young as you, most older, all marked by the same hopelessness. You wonder if you will ever feel anything other than hunger and fear. The fire burns low. Someone tells a story, but it is not funny, and nobody laughs. Tomorrow, you will march again to another village, another field, another fight that means nothing to you. You are a mercenary now, not because you wanted to be, but because you had no other choice. And so your journey begins, not as a hero, not as a villain, just another forgotten soul, swallowed by the mud and blood of history. Sleep comes slowly, if at all. You might have believed, somewhere in the soft folds of childhood, that armies were built from banners, iron, and brotherhood. You soon learn that they are built from mud, bad shoes, and the kind of hunger that carves lines into faces long before age does. The mercenary camp is not a gathering of mighty warriors, but a chaotic sprawl of men whose only real common ground is desperation. You, now among them, fit right in. Your first weeks are a collection of humiliations. It turns out you know nothing about anything that matters. You do not know how to tie your boots to stop the blisters, and so your feet bleed every day. You do not know how to fix a torn cloak, and so you shiver at night. You do not know how to drink water without swallowing mud, and so you spend your first few days feverish, clinging to consciousness with sweat soaked hands. Nobody cares, not even a little. There is no training, only work. Someone tosses you a pike. It is longer than you are tall and much heavier than it looks. Your arms are thin, your grip weak, your shoulders already aching from marching with your pack. The old mercenaries laugh at the way you stagger, calling you calf or colt or worse. They enjoy your suffering. It is one of the few entertainments left. When you drop the pike, they hit you. When you drop it a second time, they do not bother. Instead, they just take your bread ration. Work is endless. You dig latrines until your hands blister. You chop wood, clean pots, haul water from streams that stink of dead fish, and sometimes worse. Your first meal is a thin stew with a floating hunk of fat and two unidentifiable lumps. You eat it anyway because you are too hungry to be choosy. You eat with your hands because there are not enough spoons to go around. At night, there are stories, but not the kind you heard as a child. These are tales of failed sieges, betrayals, botched payments, men left behind and never spoken of again. Every story ends with someone dead, or at least permanently ruined. The older mercenaries do not tell these stories for your benefit. They tell them because that is all they have left. War stories, old wounds, and the certainty that things will only get worse. You do not sleep much. It is never quiet. Men cough, spit, groan, and scream out in nightmares. Sometimes you wake to find someone's fingers in your pouch, searching for the little coins or bits of bread you managed to hide. There is a rule, of course: do not steal from your brothers. But there are no brothers here, only men forced into close proximity by bad luck and worse decisions. Occasionally, a proper drill is called. You line up in rows, pikes on shoulders, sweating under the pale sun. The drill master is missing two fingers and most of his patience. He walks the lines, whacking shins and yanking ears, screaming the same commands again and again until your arms tremble and your eyes blur. You learn nothing about tactics or honor. You learn how to stand in line, how to keep your pike pointed the right way, how not to faint from exhaustion. That is enough. When there is no drill, there is more work. You scrape rust from blades with sand and spit. You patch holes in tents that leak anyway. You rub oil on old creaking armor that will never again shine. It is endless and pointless, but you soon learn that anything is better than fighting. The new boys, those who still look behind them, who still mumble prayers at night, think that war is waiting, always just around the corner. You learn that the real war is boredom, filth, and the relentless ache of living. The stink of the camp becomes your new skin. You can scrub and scrub, but the smell never leaves you. It is in your clothes, your hair, your mouth. Your hands are always dirty, your nails black and cracked. You get used to it, the way you get used to hunger and pain. You start to forget what it felt like to be clean, to be fed, to be warm. Sometimes you hear music, thin, tuneless melodies played on a battered lute, or the occasional whistle. It does not lift your spirits, but it does remind you that somewhere, far away, life continues. People are planting crops, falling in love, raising children. You are not one of them. You are a mercenary, which means you belong nowhere. You receive your first pay, a single copper coin, bent and almost useless, and a loaf of bread so hard you can only eat it by soaking it in soup. It is not enough, but it is more than nothing. The older men gamble away their coins on dice and cards. You do not join them. You are learning to be careful, to hoard whatever you can, to trust no one. Your body changes. Your hands grow calloused. Your arms, once thin, are now wiry. The constant pain in your feet fades to a dull ache that never quite goes away. You lose track of time. The days blur together: march, work, drill, eat, sleep. Sometimes you look up at the sky and wonder how long it has been since you last saw your village, your family, anything that mattered. The sky does not answer. You are not a soldier yet. You are not even a proper mercenary. But you are still alive, and in this world, that is the only victory that counts. Every day, you wake, work, and survive. That is all there is, and you are learning to accept it. You are not proud. You are not brave. You are simply one more body in the endless, grinding machine of war. Nobody will remember your name, but for now, you live. You had imagined that war was all about battlefields, banners, and brave last stands. You were wrong. War, as it happens, spends most of its time sitting, waiting, and rotting. The mercenary camp is not a heroic outpost, but a collection of damp tents, makeshift huts, and men too exhausted to care about much of anything. There is no order except what is beaten into you by those above, and even that dissolves into chaos every evening, just as the sun disappears behind clouds of smoke. The first thing you notice is the filth. Mud is everywhere. Not soft, clean mud, but a thick, black, sucking sludge that seems to crawl up your legs and into your bones. Your feet are always wet. Your clothes never dry. You live in a permanent state of cold discomfort, shivering by night, sweating under too many layers by day, always damp, always itchy. The ground is your bed, and it is never soft. Rats, too, have learned that wherever men gather, food follows, however little there might be. At night, you feel them crawling over your legs, and you learn not to flinch. If you do, someone else will steal your blanket. The air stinks. It is a mixture of human waste, smoke, rotting food, and fear. The latrine trenches overflow after every rainstorm, their contents finding their way back through the thin canvas walls of your tent. The cooks do what they can, but nothing can disguise the taste of spoiled meat and dirty water. Boil it as you might, the taste of the camp always wins in the end. Disease is the true enemy here. You learn to fear the sound of coughing more than the clash of steel. Coughs turn into fevers, fevers into death. The sick are separated from the rest, thrown into the fever tent, which is more like a graveyard in waiting. No one wants to go there, but sooner or later, everyone does. There are no healers, only old women who mutter prayers and rub foul smelling ointments onto your skin. Sometimes they help, usually they do not. Boredom is the weight that crushes you most. Days are spent waiting for orders that never come. You watch as the world drags by, the sun rising over the distant tree line, the endless gray of clouds, the slow march of ants across your boot. Men play dice, carve wood, or simply stare into the fire, trying to remember a life before all this. Arguments flare over nothing: a stolen onion, a missing spoon, a look that lingered too long. Sometimes these end in fistfights, sometimes in worse. Bored men are dangerous, and there are many ways to die in camp besides war. You try to keep yourself busy, but it is not easy. There is only so much cleaning, mending, or sharpening you can do before the monotony eats at your mind. Your hands crave action, but your soul dreads what that action will mean. The veterans tell you this is the worst part: waiting. Fighting is easy, they say. Boredom will rot you from the inside out. At night, the camp is a different beast. Fires dot the gloom, throwing shadows that dance across tents and men alike. Some sing songs, usually sad, sometimes bawdy, never hopeful. Laughter is rare and always tinged with desperation. You learn to listen for the sounds of trouble: a raised voice, the crash of pottery, the metallic whisper of a drawn blade. When these come, you stay low and quiet, clutching your few belongings to your chest, hoping the storm will pass without touching you. There are women in the camp, but their lives are even harder than yours. Some sell their company for food or coin. Others simply survive as best they can, ignored by most, preyed upon by some. No one speaks of them with respect, but no one lifts a finger to help them either. You learn quickly not to get involved. Mercy is expensive here, and nobody can afford it. Food is always an issue. The supply wagons arrive late, if at all. When they do, you scramble for whatever scraps you can grab: stale bread, dried beans, the occasional scrap of salted pork. Sometimes you eat nothing but boiled weeds, scraped from the edges of the camp. Hunger gnaws at you, makes you irritable, weak, and reckless. You begin to understand why men steal from each other, why the strong bully the weak. Survival is not noble. It is just survival. You make friends, if you can call them that. The man in the next tent over, whose snoring keeps you awake, sometimes shares a little cheese or a joke that almost makes you smile. But friendship is a luxury, and you do not trust anyone completely. Tomorrow, he might be dead or gone, or the one holding a knife to your throat over a crust of bread. You remind yourself not to get attached, but some nights, the sound of another voice is all that keeps you sane. The only break in the monotony comes when the officers decide it is time to move camp. Then everything is chaos. You pack your few belongings, tear down your leaking tent, and trudge through mud to another patch of ground no better than the last. Sometimes the new spot is closer to the front lines. Sometimes it is further. Either way, the same routine resumes: mud, hunger, boredom, and fear. Time passes in strange ways. Days drag, but weeks vanish. You mark the passage of time by the growing holes in your clothes, the new scars on your hands, the number of faces you no longer see each morning. There is no calendar here, only the endless turning of the wheel. You forget what month it is, what year. It does not matter. All that matters is getting through the next day, the next night, the next bowl of thin soup. You used to think there was glory in war. Now you know better. There is only the endless grind, the filth, the hunger, and the ever present fear that tomorrow will be your last day. Sleep comes in fits and starts. When it does, it is filled with dreams of home, though even those are fading now, growing distant and unreal. You wake, as always, to the stench of the camp, the sounds of suffering, and the certainty that nothing will change. This is life now. You are a mercenary, and the camp is your world, mud, misery, and all. You do not notice when it happens, not at first. At the beginning, the idea of violence, real, bloody violence, sits uneasily in your stomach. When the shouting starts in the distance, or a sudden brawl erupts over spilled ale, your instinct is to shrink away, to hide behind someone bigger, to pretend you do not see. It feels unnatural, barbaric. You are not a killer, or at least you tell yourself you are not. But brutality, in camp and in battle, is as common as rain. It falls and soaks everything. The veterans do not flinch at screams in the night, or at the sight of men dragging a thief behind the latrine trench for punishment. They barely look up when a brawl leaves a man toothless or a woman bloodied. You watch them. You try to imitate their indifference, but your eyes always linger a little too long. Your shoulders tense when someone cries out in pain. It is not only violence from others. Soon you see what the world expects from you. On the march, you are taught to keep the line. This means shoving, kicking, even clubbing those too weak to keep pace. No one wants to be at the back, where you risk being left behind or, worse, forced to carry extra gear. The slow and the sick are treated with contempt. Sympathy is a word that does not exist here. Your hands, once so uncertain, learn the work. You drive a stick into a man's ribs to make him move. You throw a stone at a dog that dares approach your bread. One night, you punch another boy for stealing your blanket. He hits you back. No one breaks up the fight. You both sleep in the mud, bleeding and shivering, but the blanket is yours. The first time you see real blood is not in battle, but in the camp. A thief caught stealing from the supply wagon is dragged before the others. The commander does not bother with speeches. The man's hand is pinned to a log and, with a rusty hatchet, chopped off. The screams are animal, tearing through the camp, but no one looks away, not even you. There is nowhere else to look. The severed hand is tossed aside like a chicken bone. Later, you see the man's stump wrapped in filthy rags, the blood already seeping through. He does not last the week. You think you will never get used to it, but you do. It is a slow process. Your horror fades, replaced by numbness. You learn to step over bodies, to ignore the crying, to eat your meal while men nearby groan with pain. Pity is a dangerous luxury, you are told. Mercy gets you killed. When battle comes, it is not what you expect. There is no order, no chivalry. The world becomes a whirlwind of mud and metal, screaming and trampling. You are taught to swing your staff or pike not at armor or shields, but at faces, throats, groins. You are told to aim for the parts of a man that bleed most, that cripple most easily. If you hesitate, even for a moment, you die. You see it happen. Someone freezes, the blade glances off his helmet, and then he is gone. A boot print in the mud where his head used to be. At first, you feel sick. Your stomach twists as you watch bodies fall, as you hear bones snap and teeth break. The ground is sticky with blood and filth, and you slip more than once, landing hard on something that might once have been a man. Afterward, you cannot eat. You vomit, shaking, certain you will never be the same. You are right. You are never the same. But time passes. The memories grow distant. Your body hardens. Your eyes lose their softness. You learn to fight not with skill or courage, but with desperation. Each battle is survival, nothing more. Each corpse another reminder that your own life is worth only as much as you are willing to take from someone else. One night, after a particularly brutal skirmish, you sit by the fire, hands stained red, too tired to even clean them. An older mercenary sits beside you. He looks at your hands, shrugs, and says, "That is just the way it is." You nod because there is nothing else to say. You do not talk about it. Nobody does. The violence becomes part of you, like hunger or cold or fear. You begin to understand that you can do terrible things and still wake up in the morning. The world does not care. No one will judge you for what you do here because everyone is guilty. Everyone is lost. Sometimes you catch your reflection in a puddle, muddy, bruised, eyes rimmed with shadows. You do not recognize the face. You are becoming what you must become to survive. You are growing used to the brutality, one broken bone, one broken oath at a time. And tomorrow you will do it all again. You might imagine that as a mercenary, your life is at least compensated with silver coins and the right to feast on the spoils of war. In truth, coin is as rare as mercy. Most days you live not for gold, but for the chance to fill your belly with something that is not dirt or grass. The lie of riches is for new recruits and children. The reality is a never ending hunger, a constant dull ache in your gut that never quite disappears. The pay, when it comes at all, is insultingly meager. Every fortnight, or whenever your captain remembers or can be bothered, you are handed a handful of small, battered coins. Sometimes they are real currency. More often, they are local tokens or foreign coins that no one in any civilized market will accept. Once, you are paid with a strip of cloth and a promise of better times ahead. You learn very quickly that promises are worth less than the stale bread you sometimes fight for. Food is never enough. Rations are supposed to be measured, but the quartermaster always keeps the best bits for himself and his friends. What is left is divided among the rest: black bread as hard as stone, bean soup thin as water, a piece of salted meat so tough it takes all night to chew. You grow skilled at eating things you once thought inedible: sour roots, half rotten apples, even the occasional roasted rat if the hunger becomes too sharp. You do not complain. Hunger is part of life now. There are days, too many, when the wagons do not come, or when the supply lines are cut by the enemy, or stolen by your own supposed allies. On those days, you feel the world shrink to the size of your stomach. Men grow restless. Fights over scraps become vicious. One day, you see three men kill a fourth over a pouch of dried peas. You do not intervene. Nobody does. The body lies in the mud until nightfall, when someone drags it away, more concerned with the lice than the loss. Stealing becomes second nature. At first, you try to resist, but hunger and need are patient teachers. You learn to watch for moments when the cook looks away, to slip a finger into another man's pack and pluck a crust of bread or a strip of jerky. You are not alone in this. Everyone steals from everyone else. It is not personal, it is survival. If you are caught, you fight. If you win, you eat. If you lose, you go hungry, or worse. Some nights you dream of your mother's kitchen, of the scent of stew thick with onions and fresh bread. You wake with tears in your eyes and a taste of ash in your mouth. The memory fades, replaced by the grinding reality of life on the edge of starvation. Then there is death, always close, never polite. It comes for the hungry first, the weak, the old, the unlucky. Disease takes many, cold takes more. In battle, death is quick and violent, but in camp, it lingers, taunting you, daring you to be slower or weaker than your companions. You watch a friend waste away, his face shrinking to a skull, his breath rattling in his chest. When he dies, nobody weeps. His boots are gone before the body cools, his blanket divided up before dawn. You do not judge, you would do the same. Sometimes you are sent on raids. These are supposed to be where the riches are, but the truth is usually more blood than bounty. You sweep into a village, swords and torches raised, searching for anything of value. You find frightened peasants, crying children, pots with only a little barley at the bottom. The loot, when there is any, is divided according to an arcane system that always leaves you with less than you hoped for and more guilt than you want. You tell yourself this is war. You tell yourself you have no choice. It does not help you sleep at night. The officers live better. You see them at their fires, eating from real plates, drinking wine from bottles with real corks. You envy them, but not enough to try for their position. Officers die too, and often with knives in their backs. Sometimes your comrades are the ones holding those knives. And yet, in the strange way of things, you survive. Day after day, hunger sharpens you, toughens you, carves away your softness. You grow lean, watchful, and hard. You begin to understand that in this life, survival is its own reward. There are no feasts, no treasures, no rest. There is only the next meal, the next scrap, the next chance to live one more day. Every so often, you hear talk of desertion. Men vanish in the night, hoping to find a kinder world. Most are caught and dragged back, beaten until their spirit breaks. Some simply disappear, their fate unknown. You wonder if you will ever have the courage or the stupidity to try. For now, you stay, not because you want to, but because there is nowhere else to go. You have become an expert in hunger, a scholar of suffering, and you are still alive. In this world that is enough, there are tales, mostly from children and priests, about noble commanders who care for their men as a father cares for his sons. The reality is that your commander is not a father. He is barely even a man in your eyes. He is a fixture, a necessity, like the latrine trench or the mud. You do not love him. You do not hate him. You endure him. He is not the hero of any tale. He is a man who learned years ago how to survive in a world that chews up the soft and spits out the unlucky. His face is a map of old scars, his eyes two chips of gray stone. When he looks at you, you feel like he is counting sheep, not men. Maybe he is. Orders come from his mouth the way curses come from a drunkard, frequent, predictable, and not open to debate. You march because he says so. You stand in the rain because he says so. When you ask why, he tells you it is because he says so. Questions are dangerous, and so you learn not to ask. If you are lucky, you are invisible. If you are unlucky, you are noticed. Being noticed is rarely a blessing. He keeps his distance. You rarely hear him laugh. When you do, it sounds wrong, like a wolf choking on a bone. He walks the camp at night, boots squelching through the muck, eyes watching for troublemakers and thieves. Some men say he never sleeps. Others say he sleeps with one eye open and a dagger under his pillow. You do not know. You do not care to find out. Once, in your first month, you saw a new recruit stumble and fall out of line. The commander did not shout. He did not even raise his hand. He simply watched as two older mercenaries encouraged the boy with kicks and curses. The message was clear: weakness is not forgiven here. When the boy did not get up, The commander shrugged and kept walking. The rest of you learned fast. Discipline is kept with the minimum amount of effort. Punishments are swift and public. A stolen loaf of bread earns a beating. Falling asleep on watch earns a night tied to a stake, exposed to the cold and rain. Cowardice in battle is a death sentence, executed with as little ceremony as chopping wood. There are no speeches, no lectures, only consequences. Sometimes, when spirits are low, and the food is especially bad, the commander gathers everyone for a speech. His words are blunt, practical, and humorless. He tells you that there is no glory in this life, only survival. He tells you that no one will remember your name, that the only thing that matters is following orders and staying alive. Strangely, this is comforting. You do not have to pretend. You do not have to dream. He is not cruel for the sake of cruelty, or at least that is what you tell yourself. He does what he must to keep the band together. He knows that a mercenary company is not held by bonds of loyalty or friendship, but by fear, hunger, and coin. You wonder sometimes if he remembers what it was like to be like you, shivering in the mud, waiting for orders, hoping not to be noticed. If he does, he never shows it. You see glimpses of another life in him sometimes. On rare occasions, you catch him staring at the fire, his face softening, his eyes lost in memory. You wonder what he thinks about family, perhaps, or battles won and lost. But as soon as he senses your gaze, his mask returns. He is the commander again, just another man trying to survive. There are moments, too, when his decisions save lives. Once, when the camp was nearly out of food, he ordered a dangerous raid on a nearby storehouse. Some men grumbled, others cursed, but the raid succeeded. You ate that night, and for a while, the commander was less hated. Gratitude is a short lived thing among mercenaries, but it exists, however faintly. The commander's word is law. That is how it must be. In a world where every day is a struggle, there is no room for democracy. You do not have meetings. You do not vote. You obey, or you leave, or you die. Most choose to obey. You do not know his past. There are rumors, of course, stories of noble blood, of disgrace, of crimes too terrible to speak aloud. You do not care. The past does not feed you, clothe you, or keep you alive. The commander does, and so you follow him. Not because you trust him, not because you admire him, but because there is no other way. In another life, perhaps, you could have been friends. Here, you are nothing but another name on his roster, another mouth to feed, another body to march and fight and bleed. He will not mourn you when you are gone. You will not mourn him either. Respect is not the same as affection. You respect the commander, or maybe you just fear him. In this life, there is little difference. There are stories about brotherhood in arms. You hear them sometimes, late at night, when someone has managed to steal a second bottle of wine, or when a bard drifts through camp, hungry enough to sing for crusts. They talk of bonds forged in fire, of men who would die for each other, of unbreakable loyalty. But in the mud soaked reality of mercenary life, friendship is as fragile and temporary as a patch of sunlight on a rainy day. You learn early that trusting someone is a gamble you can rarely afford. Everyone in the camp has learned the hard way that survival comes first. Friendship is nice, but it will not fill your belly or save your skin when the arrows start flying. You are surrounded by faces you see every day. Men who sleep a few feet away from you, whose coughs keep you awake at night, and whose snores remind you that, for now, you are not dead. You know their names, their vices, their tempers, but you do not know their hearts. That does not mean there is no warmth at all. Some days, you find yourself laughing at a crude joke, or sharing a stolen apple, or sitting close to someone by the fire when the cold grows too sharp. These moments are not friendship as poets imagine it, but brief truces in a world that is otherwise hostile and gray. There is a kind of camaraderie in shared suffering, a wordless bond in the way you all look away from the dying or pretend not to hear the whimpers at night. You sometimes find yourself drawn to certain people. The old soldier who lost his left ear and has a story for every scar. The wiry boy who can always find a mushroom or a root, no matter the season. The woman who patches up wounds for a few coins and never asks questions. You trade favors, patches for boots, a bit of bread for an hour's standing watch, a song for a sip of bitter beer. These exchanges are transactional, but over time, they develop into something like mutual reliance. Not quite trust, but close. There are moments when you forget where you are. Maybe you are sitting in the sun, cleaning your blade, and someone tosses you a plum and grins, juice running down their chin. For a second, you almost feel safe. For a second, you believe in friendship. But the spell always breaks. The next day, that same person might steal your boots or stand by as you are beaten for a crime you did not commit, or simply disappear into the mud, never to return. It is worse after battles. The ones who made it through gather around the fire, faces smeared with blood, eyes wide and haunted. You look at each other and try to joke, to pretend you are still the same men as before. But every battle leaves holes. Someone is always missing. Sometimes you cannot remember their names. Sometimes you remember too much. Death and betrayal come easily here. You see men share a meal one night and slit each other's throats the next over a handful of coins. You watch as a group bands together to steal from the officers, only for one of them to turn informer and doom the rest. There are no oaths, no ceremonies. Trust is a tool, used and discarded as needed. The closest thing to real friendship is found in the quiet moments when the world is not watching. You might sit with someone while they mend their socks, or share a memory of home, or just sit in silence listening to the rain on the canvas above your heads. These moments are private, precious, and fleeting. You do not talk about them because talking ruins them. You learn to read the signs, who will share their food, who will share their secrets, who will share nothing at all. You learn that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to leave them alone. Sometimes mercy is pretending not to notice when they cry or when they stare at nothing for hours, lost in memories they will not share. Friendship is not about sacrifice. No one here is looking for someone to die for them or to risk their life in a hopeless rescue. The best you can hope for is someone who will warn you if the officers are coming, or who will fight back to back with you when the camp is raided. Even then, you keep one eye on them, just in case. There are no promises here. Tomorrow, everything might change. Your friend Tutti might be your rival tomorrow, or gone altogether, a new face in the endless churn of the camp. You learn not to hope, not to expect, not to mourn. The only constant is change, and the only true bond is the one you have with yourself. Still, on the worst nights, when the cold creeps into your bones and the darkness feels endless, you find yourself huddling closer to another body. You tell yourself it is only for warmth, only for survival. But sometimes, just sometimes, you believe it is something more. And maybe that is enough. Violence starts as something outside of you, a rumor, a distant scream, a story told around a fire by someone older and more broken than you. But over time, violence stops being something you witness and becomes something you wear, like the dirt under your fingernails or the scars on your skin. It seeps into you, into the spaces between hunger and sleep, until you cannot remember a time when your hands were clean. At first, every act of violence is shocking. You remember the first time you had to hit someone, not because you wanted to, but because it was expected. You do not remember his name, only the look in his eyes when your fist landed. You felt sick for days, replaying it in your head, trying to convince yourself you had no choice. Everyone told you it was normal. If not you, then him. That is how it starts. Violence as necessity, never as pleasure. Then the necessity becomes routine. There are always reasons. Someone stole from you. Someone threatened you. Someone was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. There are always explanations. You start to believe them. You begin to measure your day in bruises given and bruises received. Every mark is proof that you belong, that you are learning the rules of this world. Violence is not only physical, words are weapons too. You learn to sharpen your tongue, to keep secrets, to lie when you have to. You learn to threaten and to mock, to make yourself look bigger than you are, so that others think twice before picking a fight. Sometimes you catch yourself laughing at someone else's pain, and the sound of it surprises you. You promise yourself it will never become easy. Then, one day, you realize it already is. You begin to see violence everywhere, in the way the commander's eyes narrow before a punishment, in the way the older mercenaries gesture with their knives when talking about debts, in the way the camp grows quiet after a bad defeat, the tension so thick you can taste it in the air. The world outside the camp is violent too. Every village is a potential battlefield. Every stranger, a potential enemy. You keep your hand on your weapon at all times, even when sleeping. It becomes a habit and then a reflex. There are moments when you recognize what you are becoming. You catch your reflection in a pool of dirty water or a piece of polished metal, and you do not know the person staring back. The eyes are too hard, the mouth set in a grim line. You look for traces of the person you once were, but find only shadows. You wonder if there is a way back, if you could ever live without violence. The thought seems absurd, almost laughable. This is your world now. You are not proud of what you do, but you are not ashamed either. Shame is a luxury for those who can afford it, and you cannot. You see men who take pleasure in cruelty, who hurt for the sake of hurting. You are not like them, you tell yourself. You only do what you must. But the line blurs day after day until you are not sure there is a difference. The worst is when the violence feels necessary and wrong at the same time. During a raid, you corner a family, man, woman, child. You know you should show mercy, but you also know that mercy is dangerous. You take what you need, you turn away from their tears. Later, when you try to sleep, the memory gnaws at you, but you push it aside. If you dwell on every ugly thing, you will lose your mind. There are no heroes here, only survivors. You tell yourself this over and over, as if repetition can make it true. Some nights, you hear the prayers of others, pleas for forgiveness, for peace, for a different life. You do not pray anymore. You are not sure anyone is listening. Sometimes violence comes for you too. You are not always the one holding the blade. You learn what it feels like to be on the wrong end of a beating, to wake up with broken ribs and a mouth full of blood. The pain reminds you that you are still alive, that you can still feel. You cling to that, even as the world tries to beat it out of you, and so you continue day after day, becoming harder, colder, and more violent. You watch new recruits come in with soft hands and softer eyes, and you know what will become of them. You wonder if they see the same in you. You wonder if anyone will remember you for anything other than the violence you learned to wield. By now, you do not flinch at blood, at screams, at the broken bodies left behind after battle. You clean your blade, patch your wounds, and keep moving. You tell yourself there is no other way. Perhaps there is not. Once you believed in right and wrong, in a world where good deeds were rewarded and wickedness brought punishment. Those beliefs were thin as parchment, easily torn, but you held to them all the same. They were your map, your rules for living. In the cold gray light of a mercenary's life, those rules start to rot like forgotten bread. At first, you try to keep some boundaries. You do not strike first. You do not steal from the truly desperate. You avert your eyes when others torment the weak, and when ordered to do something you know is cruel, you hesitate just long enough to convince yourself you are not complicit. You tell yourself you are still a good person, just in a bad situation. It does not last. Hunger makes you mean, and fear makes you selfish. Every principle becomes negotiable. Your first true test comes quietly, a simple order to burn down a cottage because it might harbor an enemy scout. You do not want to do it. The owner is old, bent, and pleading, his hands raised in supplication. But your commander's voice is a hammer, and you are the nail. You do as you are told, eyes fixed on your boots, and the memory lingers for days, sour as bile. There are always reasons. If you do not burn the house, you will be punished, maybe killed, maybe starved. If you do not take from others, you will have nothing. If you do not fight, you will die. There are always reasons, always excuses, until one day you realize you have stopped looking for them. You just do what is necessary. Morality becomes another tool, something you use when it helps, something you drop when it weighs you down. You see it in others too. The first time someone kills a child, there is an outcry, a few men shouting, a scuffle, a look of shame. The second time, there is only a sigh, and the camp returns to its business. The world hardens everyone, and you learn that the worst sins are soon forgotten. At night, you sometimes dream of all the faces you have wronged, all the moments when you could have chosen better. But in the morning, the dreams are gone, and the world demands your obedience. You watch as men you once respected become cruel and cunning, their kindness leached away by years of want. Some become monsters, delighting in the power that violence brings. Others withdraw into themselves, silent and haunted. You wonder which you will become, beast or ghost. Sometimes you think you are both. There are still moments when your conscience stirs. You see a child, half starved, clinging to her mother's skirts. You remember your own sister, the way she laughed on warm summer days. For a heartbeat, you want to help, but you have nothing to give, and the world is not kind to those who show mercy. The last man who tried to help someone weaker than himself ended up with a knife in his gut and his boots stolen before dawn. You keep your distance. Pity is a memory, not a practice. You invent new rules for yourself. You will not kill unless ordered. You will not steal from children. If you can help it, you will not strike a man who is already down. But every rule is bent, every line blurred. War is not a place for certainty. There are only choices, bad ones, worse ones, and the ones that haunt you at night. Religion offers no comfort. The priests in camp are as hungry and desperate as everyone else. Their sermons are thin and brittle, promises of salvation that crack under the weight of reality. You go through the motions, kneeling when told, mouthing prayers you do not believe. Once you light a candle for the soul of a man you killed. The wax melts, the flame gutters out, and nothing changes. The hardest part is learning to forgive yourself. You try sometimes. You tell yourself that you are not as bad as the others, that you are still a good person at heart, but the voice grows weaker with every passing day. You are what you do, and what you do is often ugly, cruel, and necessary. One day, After a long march and a pointless skirmish, you find yourself sitting by the fire, hands shaking, staring at nothing. An older mercenary sits beside you, silent. After a while, he says, "The war eats everyone, sooner or later. All you can do is try to hold on to something, anything, that reminds you you're still human." You nod, but you are not sure what that thing is anymore. War is not a test of courage, but of endurance, not just for your body, but for your soul. You learn to survive not just hunger and pain, but the slow erosion of everything you once believed. You tell yourself you will be better when it is over, if it ever ends. But you know, deep down, that there is no going back. You fight, you obey, you survive. Morality is a luxury. War is your reality. You do not remember when you first realized that death is the most loyal companion of a mercenary. It is always there, moving quietly among the tents, sometimes so close you feel its breath on your neck. In the beginning, death is a distant threat, something that happens to others, unlucky strangers, fools who do not watch where they step, sick men shivering on the edge of camp. But it does not stay distant for long. Death visits every night. It comes for the sick first. The fever tent is always full, and every morning a few more bodies are dragged out and dumped in shallow graves behind the latrine trench. You grow numb to the sight, faces twisted in pain, eyes staring up at nothing. Sometimes you do not even know their names. Most days you cannot remember your own. In battle, death is loud, messy, and fast. Swords and arrows do not discriminate. The air is full of screams, some short and sharp, others long and desperate. Blood sprays, mud churns, men fall. You learn to stop looking at the faces. If you recognize a friend, it only slows you down. The first time you watch someone die with your name on their lips, you feel something in you break. After that, you make sure no one gets too close. The worst deaths are the quiet ones. Men who die in the night, slipping away without a sound. You wake and find their place empty, their few belongings already divided up among the living. No one marks their passing. There are no funerals, no prayers. Death here is just another part of the routine, something you expect, like hunger or rain. Some men try to pretend they are immune. They swagger, boast, tell stories about all the ways they have cheated death. You see through them. You know they are as afraid as everyone else, maybe more. The bravest men are usually the ones who die first, charging into danger, desperate to prove something to themselves or to others. Cowards last longer, but not by much. You develop rituals, little ways to keep death at bay. You spit before battle. You rub a lucky coin or whisper a half remembered prayer. None of it helps, but it gives you something to do with your hands, something to focus on besides the fear. The fear never leaves, not really. You simply learn to carry it, like another piece of your battered kit. Sometimes death is a mercy. When a man is too wounded to move, too broken to heal. You see the look in his eyes, pleading, desperate, ready for it to end. You learn to kill quickly, without words, without looking. You tell yourself it is kindness. Maybe it is. Other times, death is a punishment. Thieves, deserters, cowards, each has their moment. The executions are public, meant to remind everyone that the rules still matter, even here. You force yourself to watch, even when you want to look away. You have to remind yourself that you are still alive, that you are not the one kneeling in the mud. The bodies pile up. Some are buried, most are not. The crows grow fat, the ground grows sour. Disease follows, and with it, more death. You lose track of the numbers. They do not matter. All that matters is that you are not among them, not yet. Every night before you sleep, you wonder if it will be your last. You listen to the sounds of the camp, the coughs, the groans, the restless shuffling of men who cannot sleep. You wonder who will be missing in the morning. You wonder if anyone will miss you. You learn to accept death as part of life. You do not dwell on it. You do not mourn. If you did, you would not survive. You keep moving, keep fighting, keep eating and sleeping and waking, day after day. There is no time for grief. But some nights, when the camp is quiet and the fire burns low, you remember the faces of those who are gone. You remember the sound of their laughter, the shape of their dreams. You wonder what they would have become if the world had been kinder. You wonder what you will become if you survive long enough to grow old. Death is never far. It is the silent shadow at your back, the chill in your bones, the emptiness in your belly. You do not welcome it, but you do not fear it, not anymore. It is just another part of being a mercenary. You learn early that promises mean little in the world of mercenaries. Words are cheaper than dirt, and contracts are scraps of parchment only useful for starting fires. The idea that you will always be paid for your suffering, for your bruises and broken bones, is a joke told by men too new to understand how things really work. There are many ways not to get paid. Sometimes the lord or merchant who hired your band simply disappears, leaving the gates locked and the guards doubled. Sometimes there is no lord at all, just a local who was never going to pay in the first place, vanishing at the first rumor of victory or defeat. Sometimes the commander himself, that gray eyed wolf, shrugs and says, "There is nothing left." And that is the end of it. All your wounds, all your nights in the mud, all your dead friends, paid for in empty air. When payment is delayed, tempers in the camp flare. The quartermaster becomes the most hated man in the world, no matter how many times he swears he is just waiting for the coin. Bread rations shrink mysteriously. Wine and ale, if you get them at all, taste like vinegar. Gambling grows fierce and bitter, and fights break out over smaller and smaller stakes. No one trusts anyone. You learn to keep your few possessions close, your knife closer. The first time you are cheated, you cannot believe it. You march all day under the sun. your armor biting into your shoulders, your mouth dry, and lips cracked. You fight, you bleed, you count the dead, and when it is all over, you gather at the paymaster's tent, only to hear that there will be no payment. Not this week, maybe not ever. The officers grumble and talk of discipline, but everyone knows the truth. There is no coin and no justice to be found. You consider leaving, but where would you go? You have no home, no trade, no hope of welcome in any town or village. You might as well wish for wings. So you stay, like everyone else. Hunger keeps you chained to your ration, no matter how small or tasteless it becomes. Some men do try to desert, some succeed. At least, you never see them again. Others are caught and dragged back, bloodied and limping, made into examples by the commander. There is a lesson in their suffering. You belong to the company until it decides otherwise. Freedom is a dream for another kind of man. On rare occasions, a payment does arrive, a battered chest of coins, a wagon of barley, or sacks of old flour. These moments feel like miracles, greeted with wild relief and ugly laughter, but the happiness is thin and short lived. The officers always take their share first, and the scraps that remain are never enough to buy you out of misery. When coin is not forthcoming, the band finds other ways to get paid. Raids on nearby farms grow more frequent, justified by the commander as requisitioning. You learn the difference between theft and survival is only who is holding the sword. You hate yourself for what you do, but hunger and cold are more persuasive than conscience. You notice the way your heart hardens with every missed payment. You become meaner, more suspicious. You stop expecting anything good. Each time your hand closes around empty air instead of a coin, a little more of your old self falls away. You do not miss it. Sometimes you try to remember what it was like to work for honest pay, a day in the fields, a loaf of bread for your labor, a few copper coins at the week's end. It feels like a story from someone else's life. You are not sure you ever really believed in fairness, but you mourn it all the same. There are always rumors. The next Lord will pay. The next contract is real work. The officers pass around stories of rich cities and generous nobles just waiting for a strong arm. You listen, but you do not believe. You have learned too much about empty promises. You learn to live on less, to expect nothing, to be grateful for crumbs. Your world shrinks to the size of your next meal, your next safe sleep, the next battle that does not kill you. Money, when it comes, is gone before you know it, spent on food, drink, or a brief hour in a warm bed. There is no saving, no planning, just surviving, day after day. In the end, you realize the truth. You are not paid in coin, but in scars, in calluses and nightmares, in friendships that do not last, and wounds that do. That is the currency of a mercenary's life, and you are always overdrawn. You stay because you have nowhere else to go, and when you are not paid, you do what every mercenary does. You grit your teeth, curse the world, and keep marching. You would think a city is different from a camp, a place where people are clean, safe, and fed. The stories you heard as a child painted city life in bright colors, bustling markets, warm bread, laughter in every street. But by the time you finally march into one, hollow with hunger and reeking of old sweat and fear, you realize the city is just another kind of battlefield. At first, there is relief. The smell is different here, not smoke and dung, but something sour and sweet, a thick stew of rotting vegetables, horse piss, and the faintest whiff of baking bread if you are lucky enough to walk near a bakery. The streets are too narrow, packed with the desperate and the cunning. Everywhere, eyes flicker over your clothes, your battered weapons, your empty purse. The city does not welcome you, it sizes you up. Your band sets up camp near the old walls, crowded in with refugees and beggars. For a moment, you almost feel invisible, but you learn quickly that mercenaries are noticed, sometimes as threats, sometimes as opportunities. Children throw stones at you as you pass. Shopkeepers eye you warily, hiding their wares behind battered shutters. The city guard looks at you with open contempt, hand always on the hilt of a sword. You drift through the city like a ghost. The taverns offer warmth, but only if you pay. The drink is watered and the bread is stale, but for a few coins you can pretend to be someone else, a traveler, a tradesman, anything but what you really are. Most of the time, you just nurse your mug and listen. The laughter here is hard and sharp, edged with cruelty. You see drunks sprawled in alleys, women selling themselves in corners, thieves slipping through crowds like shadows. Food is always a problem. The city has plenty, but none of it is meant for you. You fight with dogs for scraps behind the bakeries, sometimes managing to buy a bruised apple or a chunk of cheese with your last coin. The market stalls are overflowing, but the prices are made for other people. You are left with what you can beg, steal, or trade. You try to find work, but the city is already overflowing with strong arms and empty bellies. The good jobs are taken by those with family or favors to trade. The worst jobs, hauling night soil, cleaning butcher's scraps, carrying bricks, pay less than you can steal in a lucky hour. So you drift, sometimes joining your band in odd jobs, guarding a warehouse, breaking up a riot, shaking down a debtor for a local boss. You tell yourself it is honest work. You know better. Night in the city is worse than night in the camp. The walls close in, and the darkness is full of teeth. Thieves come out, silent and quick, and you learn to sleep with your back against something solid and your knife within reach. You do not trust the guards any more than the cut purses. More than once, you see a uniform in the shadows, waiting for easy prey. You keep your head down, your purse hidden, and your eyes open. There is entertainment, if you can call it that. Street performers swallow fire or dance on broken glass for a handful of coins. In the back rooms of taverns, men gamble away everything they own, and women with painted faces offer a few minutes of forgetting for those with coin. You see laughter here, but it is the laughter of desperation, of people who know they will wake up just as hungry as you. The city does have churches, clean and bright on the outside. You wander inside once, seeking solace. The priest looks at you the way a butcher looks at a lame ox. The prayers are pretty, the candles warm, but you leave just as empty as you entered. Mercy is in short supply here, too. Sometimes you see men and women who live well, fat merchants, minor nobles, clergy with rings on every finger. They glide through the filth untouched, as if the city belongs to them alone. You wonder what they think when they see you. Do they feel fear, disgust, pity? You are invisible to them, a shadow among many. If you linger in the city too long, your band begins to splinter. Some men vanish into the maze of alleys and are never seen again. Others fall in with gangs, lured by the promise of regular meals and a roof over their heads. Some drink themselves to oblivion, dying quietly in gutters. You realize that, for all its crowds, the city is the loneliest place you have ever been. You begin to long for the misery of the camp, the sameness, the predictability, even the mud. In the city, at least, you are reminded how little you have and how quickly it can be taken from you. Your dreams grow thin and cold. You start to forget what hope felt like, and when the band moves on, you do not look back. The city is not a place of rest. It is just another chapter in the endless grind of your mercenary life. One more place where nobody cares if you live or die. You used to think scars were badges of honor, stories to impress others, marks that set you apart. Now you know better. Scars are the sum total of every day you have survived, a grim inventory of pain, hunger, and fear. You have so many now that you lose count. Some are obvious, jagged lines across your arms and legs, shiny patches where blades bit deep or arrows glanced off bone. Others are quieter, the places where teeth broke skin or where infection burned through you in the heat of summer. Each tells a story, and none of them are happy. At first, you try to hide them. You rub greasy ointments into the wounds, hoping they will fade. You cover them with your sleeves, with stolen rags, with dirt. You flinch when others look, as if their eyes might pry open old wounds. But it is pointless. In the end, you stop caring. Everyone in your band is marked, inside and out. The scars are your uniform, more permanent than any coat or badge. But it is not just your skin that is marked. The deeper scars run through your memory, your nerves, your sense of self. You feel them every night when you lie down, and the silence presses in on you, full of voices you would rather forget. You see them in the eyes of the men and women around you, haunted, empty, desperate for something they cannot name. You carry the weight of everything you have done and everything you failed to do. Guilt is heavier than any sword. There are nights when your dreams are so vivid you wake with a shout, reaching for a weapon, heart pounding, sweat soaking your shirt. You dream of all the faces you have seen, twisted in pain or terror, of the screams that never quite leave your ears. Sometimes the dead talk to you, sometimes they just stare, silent and accusing. You try not to think about what it means. You notice how your body changes. Old wounds ache in the cold, stiffen in the rain. You learn to walk with a limp after a spear glanced off your knee one wet afternoon. Your fingers are crooked where they were broken and never set right. Your back aches from years of sleeping on the ground. Your teeth are loose from too many blows to the jaw. You learn to live with pain as you live with hunger, as just another part of the world. Your senses dull in some ways and sharpen in others. Loud noises no longer startle you, but a certain note in a voice or a shift in the camp's mood will set your nerves on edge. You know when trouble is coming, even before it starts. You trust these instincts more than you trust your own thoughts. You have learned over and over that the body does not forget. Sometimes you try to remember who you were before. What did you dream of? What did you want from life? The answers are hazy, like shapes in fog. The person you once were is gone, lost under layers of scars and dirt and regret. You wonder if you could find your way back, if you even want to. You see it in others too. The old mercenaries who have survived longer than anyone thought possible, they are twisted, hollowed out, their laughter edged with something sharp and dangerous. You know that is your future if you last. You see the new recruits, still soft, still hopeful. You feel a pang of envy and a surge of pity. You do not warn them. They would not listen. The world does not reward survivors with peace. Scars are not medals. They are debts you can never repay. The more you collect, the less you feel. Kindness becomes harder with every wound. You find yourself snapping at people for no reason, mistrusting every friendly gesture. You keep your guard up even when you know it is pointless. Sometimes, when you find a moment alone, you run your fingers over your scars and try to remember each one, the names, the places, the reasons. Some you recall in perfect detail, others you cannot place at all, just more marks, more proof that you are still here. You do not know whether to be proud or ashamed. There are moments, rare and fragile, when you wish for healing, not just for your skin, but for your heart. You want to believe it is possible that you could live without fear or anger or pain. But those moments pass quickly. The world you live in does not have much use for hope. Instead, you wrap yourself in your scars, hide inside them. They are your shield, your excuse, your warning to others. They say, I have survived. They say, do not get too close. In a way, they are all you have left. And so you keep going, marked inside and out, each scar a reminder that the world does not forget or forgive. You learn to live with them because you have no choice. You used to think wars had a beginning and an end, battles with trumpets and banners, a winner and a loser, a day when the fighting stops and everyone goes home. That is how the tales are told, anyway. But for a mercenary, war is not a story with a neat ending. It is a grinding wheel, always turning, always hungry for more bodies and more pain. There is always another conflict. Maybe a lord's border has shifted, or a town refuses to pay its taxes. Maybe a bandit king grows too bold, or a rival claims some old right to a patch of mud nobody wants. It does not matter to you. You march wherever you are told, fight for whoever pays, kill whoever stands in the way. Each new campaign is just another chapter in a book you never wanted to read. The landscape changes, but the life does not. Sometimes you march through forests, sometimes across endless fields of mud, sometimes over frozen rivers where the ice groans and cracks beneath your boots. It is always cold, always wet, always exhausting. Your boots wear out faster than you can patch them. Your cloak grows thinner each year until it has more holes than fabric. You get used to sleeping wherever you can, under carts, in ditches, in half burned barns. You stop caring about comfort. Survival is enough. The faces around you change too. The band is never the same for long. Some die in battle, others of sickness, or a poorly timed insult to the wrong officer. Some just vanish, gone in the night, and no one bothers to look for them. New men and women arrive, wide eyed and hopeful, and you watch as the world crushes the hope out of them. You do not bother learning their names. You have forgotten too many already. Sometimes a campaign goes well. You take a town, win a battle, get paid in silver instead of promises. There is feasting, laughter, a sense that maybe, just maybe, you have earned a little rest. But it never lasts. Someone always wants more, and the wheel keeps turning. The fighting starts again, and the brief taste of happiness turns bitter in your mouth. There are times when the enemy is not another army, but hunger, cold, or disease. You lose as many men to fever as to swords. A winter siege drains the life out of you in ways a blade never could. The snow falls, the wind howls, and you huddle together for warmth, wondering if you will wake up in the morning or freeze where you sleep. You see men lose fingers, toes, ears. You see them go mad from hunger or loneliness. Some just stop moving one day, staring into the distance with eyes that have seen too much. You wonder sometimes what peace would feel like. Would you even recognize it? Could you lay down your weapon, find a home, trust a quiet night? The thought is both tempting and terrifying. You have spent so long in the noise and chaos of war that silence seems unnatural. When you do get a break, when for a few days or weeks there is no fighting, you are restless, uneasy. You find yourself looking for danger, expecting betrayal. Peace is an empty stomach, a wound that will not heal. The world outside the wars continues, oblivious to your suffering. Farmers plant their fields, children grow up, couples marry and laugh. You see it from a distance, like a play you are not allowed to join. Sometimes you walk through a village untouched by war, and the people look at you with a mixture of fear and pity. You want to tell them you are not a monster, just tired and hungry, but your face is too hard and your clothes too ragged. You keep moving, a shadow passing through their lives. Some men dream of saving enough to buy land, start a new life, leave the fighting behind. Most never do. The coin you earn slips away, spent on food, drink, women, a few moments of warmth and forgetfulness. The future is a luxury. You live from day to day, battle to battle, scar to scar. You tell yourself you will quit after the next campaign or the one after that. Just one more job, one more payday, one more winter survived. But there is always another war, another reason to stay. The world does not run out of men willing to kill or men willing to pay for it. In the end, you stop looking for an end. War is your world now, a world of mud, blood, and endless marching. There is no escape, only the hope that you will last one more day, and then another after that. The wheel keeps turning, and you keep walking. There is no ending, only the grind. You once believed in the future. In your earliest days, even after you joined the mercenary band, there was a part of you that held on to hope like a secret charm, a future where you might save enough coin to buy a patch of land, or you might hang up your sword and become someone else. Perhaps you dreamed of going home, of seeing your family again, or finding a place where no one knew your name or your sins. But hope does not last long in the world of hired swords. In the beginning, you held on to small dreams. You counted coins carefully after every campaign, hiding them away from greedy hands and even greedier officers. Sometimes you even tried to plan one more season, one more fight, and then you would be free. But the world had other ideas. The price of everything you needed, boots, food, a night indoors, kept rising. And so, little by little, your savings shrank while your wounds multiplied. The others were the same. You heard their stories around the fire, quiet confessions muttered into the darkness when no one else seemed to be listening. One man talked about a daughter waiting in a distant village, the other about a woman he hoped to marry if only he returned alive. There was a boy who dreamed of learning to read, a girl who imagined owning a cart and mule. But by the next campaign, their hopes were gone, lost to wounds, to cold, to disappointment, or just to the simple grind of survival. You learn not to talk about hope. To speak of it is to tempt fate, to invite disaster. Those who make plans for the future are often the first to die, as if the world cannot tolerate even the smallest seed of optimism. You watch as men and women stop talking about tomorrow, their dreams shrinking until all that is left is the next meal, the next safe place to sleep, the next day without pain. At some point, you stop saving altogether. What is the point? Coin slips through your fingers as quickly as water through a cracked bucket. You spend what you have on food, on drink, on anything that might bring even a moment's relief. You learn to take your pleasures where you can find them: a cup of warm soup, a joke that makes you laugh, a quiet moment watching the sun rise. These small comforts become your world as the big dreams fade away. You stop believing in heroes. When you first joined, some part of you thought that maybe you could make a difference, that maybe mercenaries could be more than thieves with swords. Maybe you could protect the weak, punish the wicked, do some good. But the work wears you down, and every day you are forced to choose between your own survival and someone else's suffering. Most days, there is no choice at all. You see yourself clearly now. You are not a hero. You are not even a villain. You are just another shadow in the mud, another pair of hungry eyes watching for the next disaster. You do what you must, and you tell yourself that is enough. But sometimes, in the quiet between battles, you remember the person you used to be. You wonder where they went, if they are lost forever. Hope, when it does come, is dangerous. It whispers of escape, of better days ahead, and then the world punishes you for your optimism. A friend dies, a plan falls apart, a promise is broken. You learn to silence hope before it grows too loud. It is safer that way. And yet, in spite of everything, there are moments when hope sneaks in. Maybe it is a warm morning, the rare taste of something sweet, a child's laughter echoing from a farmhouse as you pass by. In those moments, you feel something stir inside you, a reminder that life is not just pain and survival. You tell yourself it does not matter, that you cannot afford to feel. But for a heartbeat, you remember what it was like to dream. It passes, as everything does. The world reminds you of its rules. The next battle, the next wound, the next empty promise brings you back to yourself, a mercenary with nothing but scars, memories, and the endless road ahead. In the end, forgotten hopes are all you have left. You bury them deep under layers of mud and cynicism and keep walking. The future is just another story, and you have stopped believing in stories. There comes a time when you stop thinking about tomorrow. The future shrinks to the size of a bowl of soup or the warmth of a thin blanket. Ambition dies quietly, without protest, replaced by a single urge: survive. You become an animal, focused on the next meal, the next safe place to sleep, the next battle where, if luck favors you, you might walk away with all your fingers and toes. You do not remember when this shift happened. It crept up on you the way hunger does, or the way old wounds begin to ache as the weather turns. One day you catch yourself counting the rations in your pouch, not for some grand journey or escape, but just to know if you will eat tonight. Another day you realize you have not spoken a kind word in weeks, not out of meanness, but because kindness costs too much. Every gesture, every word is weighed against the simple math of survival. Routine becomes your master. Wake, eat if you can, work, fight, sleep, repeat. There are no holidays, no feasts, no celebrations. Even victories are muted, the laughter thin, and the smiles wary. Every new scar is just another mark on the ledger, another sign that you are still alive. You patch your clothes, sharpen your blade, check your boots for holes. Every possession matters now. The loss of a single sock can mean frostbite. A broken strap on your pack can mean hours of misery. There are dangers everywhere. Hunger, always. Illness, spreading in the damp cold. The cough that starts in one tent soon becomes a plague, thinning your numbers more efficiently than arrows. And men, too, are a danger, desperate, angry, unpredictable. You sleep with a blade at hand, and when someone stirs too close in the dark, you do not hesitate to bare your teeth. Your dreams, when you have them, are simple: warmth, a meal that fills you, water that does not taste of iron or rot. Sometimes you imagine lying in the sun with nothing to do, but even that feels dangerous. Idleness is an enemy. It invites regret, memory, the kind of thinking that leads to despair. In camp, you keep to yourself. The group is not a family. It is a shifting mass of hungry mouths and sharp elbows. There are alliances, temporary, fragile, dependent on who has food or information. Today's friend is tomorrow's rival. You do not share secrets. You do not ask questions. Trust is a currency that is always in short supply. You become skilled at scavenging. Your eyes scan the ground for anything useful: a discarded scrap of leather, a rusted nail, a bit of cloth. Nothing is wasted. You learn to repair, to patch, to improvise. You steal when you must, barter when you can, and swallow your pride because pride cannot keep you warm. There are moments when you catch a glimpse of yourself reflected in a muddy puddle or a battered shield. You hardly recognize the gaunt face, the hollow eyes, the lips pressed into a hard, thin line. You try not to look for too long. Self pity is another luxury, and you cannot afford it. Morality, if it exists at all, is trimmed to fit the circumstances. You do not think about right and wrong. You think about living to see another sunrise. If you have to steal a crust of bread or push someone aside to claim a dry corner of a tent, you do it without guilt. There is no reward for goodness here, only survival. You see others do worse, and you do not judge. You understand. You move from place to place, never staying anywhere for long. When the camp breaks, you march because you have no choice. When the fighting starts, you fight because hesitation is deadly. When the order comes to loot a village or burn a field, you do it because refusing would mean your own death. Regret is something for later if you live that long. Sometimes you envy the dead. They have escaped the grind, the hunger, the cold. But most of the time, you cling to life with a kind of stubborn fury. You will not let the world have you yet, not without a fight. Survival becomes its own kind of meaning, thin and bitter, but meaning nonetheless. You stop thinking of yourself as a person with a story. You are not the hero. You are not even a villain. You are just another shadow in the long line of forgotten souls moving forward because there is nowhere else to go. And that, in the end, is all there is. The endless pursuit of survival, one day at a time, until there are no more days left. It is easy, in the beginning, to believe your enemies are monsters. That is what everyone says. The ones on the other side are devils, cowards, barbarians. Their banners flutter in the distance, a collection of colors and symbols you learn to hate before you ever see the faces beneath the helmets. Hatred is supposed to make the killing easier, but the truth, you discover, is muddier and far less convenient. When you face the enemy up close, you see the same hunger in their eyes, the same desperation in their faces. Their armor is as battered as yours. Their hands shake sometimes before the charge. Their leaders shout empty promises about glory, and you watch them flinch at the same whistling arrows, the same thunder of hooves. After a battle, when you pick through the wreckage for anything useful, you sometimes find the enemies dead. You crouch beside them, searching for a coin pouch or a dry scrap of bread, and you notice the details: a face twisted in pain or fear, hands calloused in the same places as your own, a crude tattoo on a forearm, a religious amulet pressed into a stiff fist. Once you find a locket with a tiny drawing inside, a child maybe, or a sweetheart. You take it anyway. Sentimentality does not fill your belly, but it lingers in your mind, gnawing at you for days. The first time you look into the eyes of a dying enemy, you expect to feel triumph or at least relief. Instead, all you see is another person, terrified, alone, clinging to life in the same brutal way you do. Their lips move, mouthing words you do not understand. You think for a moment about mercy, but there is none to give. You do what you must and keep moving, but the moment stays with you. It does not fade, no matter how many times you tell yourself you are different. The commanders bark about honor and loyalty, but you know the truth. Both sides are fighting for the same things: pay, food, the hope of making it through another season. Sometimes, when the fighting lulls, you trade with the enemy: bread for tobacco, a battered flask for a handful of nuts. There is laughter, even a kind of camaraderie. You marvel at how easily hatred is set aside when there is profit to be made or boredom to be shared. You begin to wonder, if the world were different, would you sit beside these men at a tavern, trading jokes instead of blows? Would you share stories about lost loves and broken dreams? You never ask, but the question lingers. In the rare moments when you are forced to face your reflection, in a pool of water, in a pane of city glass, you realize with a shock that you look like the enemy: dirty, gaunt, scarred, eyes sunken and wary. It becomes harder and harder to tell yourselves apart. Their dead look like you're dead. Their survivors look like your survivors, haggard, numb, and grateful for the smallest mercy. Sometimes you overhear prisoners speaking your language, or you see the same style of stitching in their clothes, the same patchwork repairs on their boots. You hear them praying to the same saints, cursing the same officers. The world seems small then, and the lines between us and them blur into gray. In one battle, you capture an enemy boy no older than your youngest brother. He begs for his life in a voice so familiar it makes your chest ache. You want to believe you would spare him, but the others decide otherwise. You look away, pretending not to hear his pleas. That night, sleep does not come. War teaches you to dehumanize the enemy, but reality resists. You see again and again that they are just as trapped as you, fodder for someone else's ambitions, ground down by hunger and fear. The only real difference is the side you stand on, and you begin to suspect that even that is a matter of luck and timing. The world is a cruel teacher, and the lesson is clear. Today's enemy could be tomorrow's comrade, or even tomorrow's corpse. There are no heroes, no true villains, only men and women doing what they must to survive. You stop hating the enemy, not because you have grown kinder, but because hatred is exhausting and you have no energy left for illusions. When you kill out of necessity, not anger. When you mourn the dead, you mourn for all of them, because you see yourself in every fallen body. And as the war drags on, you wonder if there is anything left to fight for except the hope of making it to the next dawn. It would be easier, you think, if every battle had a purpose. If each time you were ordered to raise your weapon, it was for something clear: defending a home, avenging a friend, fighting for a cause that mattered. But the truth is that most battles come and go with no meaning at all. They start with a shout, a trumpet, a roll of drums, and end in blood and mud. The reasons are lost, if they ever existed in the first place. There are days when you are told to attack a hill or hold a ditch with no idea who ordered it or why. Sometimes you are defending a patch of earth so barren that nothing grows there. Sometimes you are sent to burn fields that could feed 1,000 mouths. The plans come from men who have never held a spear with trembling hands or tried to sleep with a sword for a pillow. You obey because obedience is all that is left. You hear the rumors, always. This lord wants revenge for an insult. That town did not pay its taxes. Someone's cousin married someone else's daughter, and now the blood must be repaid. None of it matters to you. What matters is the shout to form up, the weight of your armor, the taste of bile in your mouth as you march towards yet another pointless clash. The battles themselves blend together. The sun rises, men scream, blades flash, blood runs. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, but nothing changes. The ground is soaked with so much blood that even the crows seem bored. The survivors drag themselves away, patch their wounds, and wait for the next command. The losers are left behind, nameless and unburied. You watch as friends die for reasons no one can explain. Sometimes you ask just to hear the answer, but the explanations are always empty. Orders, honor, the will of the captain, You stop asking. You stop caring. You are a piece in someone else's game, moved from one square to the next until you fall off the board. The worst is when you realize that even victory is hollow. You seize a town only to find it already picked clean by the last band of mercenaries, the people too frightened or too angry to offer even a crust of bread. You burn a village, but there is nothing left to loot except a few starving animals and the ruins of empty homes. The spoils of war are ash and misery. The commanders talk of strategy and discipline, but you see the truth. Most battles are fought for nothing by men who want nothing more than to survive another day. You fight because there is no other choice. The enemy is the same as you, hungry, tired, lost in a world that has forgotten why any of this began. Some of your comrades try to find meaning. They talk about justice, about making things right, about finding peace. You watch as hope leaves their faces, replaced by the same mask you wear. Every loss chips away at what little humanity remains. You think sometimes about refusing an order. What would happen if you threw down your weapon and walked away? You know the answer. The others would not follow. The officers would kill you or worse. The war would roll on without you. Another nameless mercenary trampled underfoot. After a while, even the rituals lose their power. You stop rubbing your lucky coin. Stop whispering prayers. The superstitions seem pointless when nothing changes. You become numb to the fear, the pain, even the thrill of survival. The only thing that matters is making it through the day, however senseless it may be. You begin to wonder if the world has always been this way. Were there ever battles that meant something? Or is that just another story told by old men to comfort themselves as they fade away? You do not know. You only know that every battle, every scar, every lost friend brings you closer to emptiness. And yet you keep going because that is what mercenaries do. You fight, you march, you eat and sleep and fight again. The cycle repeats over and over until you can no longer remember why you started. The worst part is knowing that, for all the senselessness, the killing will go on. There is always another battle, another hill to take, another meaningless order to follow. The war is a beast that cannot be satisfied, and you are just another morsel swallowed in the dark. You do not become a mercenary for the rewards, though sometimes you pretend that is the case. The price you pay for this life is not measured in coins or stolen loot, but in things you only realize are gone once it is far too late to reclaim them. The consequences of your choices trail behind you like a tattered cloak, growing heavier with every season, every scar, every grave you help to fill. The most obvious price is your body. You feel it every time you rise from a damp bedroll or march another endless mile on wounded feet. Bones that were once strong ache in the cold. Muscles stiffen and refuse to cooperate. Scars stretch and pull. You lose teeth, fingers, sometimes whole limbs. You see it in others too. A man with one eye, a woman limping on a splinted leg, the old fighter whose hands shake so badly he cannot thread a needle. These are the badges of your trade, not medals, but warnings. Every wound is a memory, and the memories do not fade. Sleep is never peaceful. Nightmares follow you everywhere. You dream of battles you cannot win, faces you cannot save, of homes burned and voices calling out in the dark. Even when sleep comes, it is restless, a shallow, unsatisfying thing that leaves you more exhausted at dawn than you were at dusk. You wake often, unsure if the screams you hear are your own or someone else's. The mind suffers in ways the body cannot show. Fear and suspicion become your constant companions. You forget how to trust, how to laugh without flinching. Every kindness you receive feels like a trap, every smile a mask. You withdraw into yourself, living behind a wall of silence and caution. Sometimes you think you might be losing your mind, bit by bit, worn down by years of violence and disappointment. There are days when you cannot remember who you used to be. The old dreams of family, peace, respect seem like stories told to a different person. You watch new recruits arrive, faces full of hope and ambition, and you know what will become of them. You envy their innocence, but cannot bring yourself to warn them. The world will teach them soon enough. The worst consequence is what you lose inside. The part of you that once wanted to do good, to make the world better, to love and be loved. These things are buried under layers of cynicism and regret. You find yourself doing things you would have once found unthinkable, taking from the helpless, turning away from suffering, even killing without hesitation or remorse. The line between necessary and evil blurs until there is nothing left but survival. You notice how people look at you in the rare moments you pass through a village or a town. Mothers pull their children close. Merchants watch you with narrowed eyes. Priests make the sign of protection when you draw near. You are not welcome, never trusted, always seen as a threat. You understand. You have become the thing you once feared. Even among your own, there is a little comfort. The band is a gathering of the broken, each person carrying their own weight of sorrow and shame. Bonds form quickly, but break even faster. Betrayal is always lurking. The only true loyalty is to yourself, and even that wavers on the worst nights. You think sometimes of leaving, of starting over, finding a patch of land to call your own, living quietly far from the shadows of war. But the consequences of this life follow you everywhere. You do not know how to farm, how to build, how to live in peace. Your hands are built for weapons, not plows. Your heart is trained for suspicion, not trust. The world outside the camp feels distant, unreachable, a dream you can never touch. As you grow older, the band grows smaller. The faces you knew vanish one by one. The stories you carry are told less often because no one wants to remember. The future shrinks, leaving only the present. One day, one battle, one cold night at a time. Sometimes you wonder if you would choose differently, given another chance. But then you remember the hunger, the cold, the cruelty of the world outside the band. You remember that there were never any real choices, just a series of bad options, each worse than the last. You have become what the world made you. The consequences are all around, in every limp, every nightmare, every empty promise. You pay for them every day, and there is no end to the debt. You keep going because stopping means thinking, and thinking means feeling, and feeling means facing the truth. You are as lost as all the others, and you would not wish this life on anyone. There is no grand ending for a mercenary, no moment of triumph, no parade, no gentle return to a grateful home. The world you live in does not reward survivors with rest. If you are lucky, your story simply fades away, a quiet slip into darkness, an old wound that finally refuses to heal, a last sleep beneath a borrowed cloak on the edge of some nameless road. More likely, you vanish the way most mercenaries do, in mud, in blood, among strangers who will not remember your name. You imagine sometimes what your death will look like. Will it be sudden, sharp, a blade through your ribs in the chaos of battle? Will it come in the night, a cough turning to fever while your comrades step around you, more concerned with their own boots than your suffering? Or will you simply grow old, older than most anyway, and wake one day to find your body has finally had enough? No one prepares you for the ways you can die in this life. No one grieves for you, except perhaps in passing, when someone claims your cloak or your spot by the fire. The world moves on. The war does not end, not truly. Another band takes your place. Another hungry youth picks up your discarded blade, walks the path you wore thin with your feet. Your name, your scars, your story all become part of the endless churn, lost in a history written by men who never fought, never starved, never saw what you saw. There are no ballads for mercenaries, only silence. You hope, in a small, childish way, that something of you will remain. Maybe a lesson for someone else, a warning, a story told in the next camp on a cold night. More likely, you will be forgotten entirely. The world has too many like you to care about one more. Your legacy is a patch of trampled earth, a notch on a sword, a faded memory in the mind of someone who has already forgotten your face. Sometimes you meet an old comrade who left the life. They wear different clothes now, walk with less fear. You see something in their eyes, a shadow, perhaps, or a flicker of guilt. You wonder what it cost them to find peace. You wonder if peace is real, or just a story people tell themselves to sleep at night. For you, the road is all that remains. There are nights when you dream of home, though you know it does not exist anymore. The faces are all wrong, the streets narrower, the houses smaller and meaner. You remember people who are long dead, places that have been swallowed by war. You dream of a warm hearth, a gentle hand, a meal shared with laughter. You wake cold, hungry, and alone. The dreams hurt more than the wounds ever did. You watch the young ones come in, full of bravado and hope. You want to warn them, to tell them there is nothing for them here, that this path leads only to ruin. But you do not speak. No one would listen, just as you would not have listened. Each person must learn the lesson on their own, must earn their own scars. You find yourself thinking about what you would do differently if you had another chance. The answer changes every time. Some days you think you would have run away. Other days you think you would have tried harder, fought more, trusted less. In the end, it does not matter. This is the life you lived, the only life you were given. There is no going back. The world will not miss you. That truth is both a curse and a blessing. Your passing will not make the crops grow or the rivers run clean, will not bring peace to the lands you marched across, but neither will it make things worse. You have left as little mark as possible, and in a world as hard as this one, perhaps that is mercy. On the last day, when you feel the end coming, you think not of glory or revenge or even of home. You think of simple things, the taste of bread, the sound of rain, the brief comfort of another body beside yours on a cold night. You think of every morning you survived, every friend you lost, every moment you almost believed things might change. You realize that in a way, you did endure. You lived longer than you expected. You became someone you never thought you would be. That is not triumph, but it is something. The fire burns low. Your eyes grow heavy. The camp is quiet, or maybe you are too far gone to notice the noise. There is no fear, only exhaustion. You close your eyes and let the world slip away. Tomorrow, another mercenary will wake, pick up your pack, and take your place. The wheel turns as it always has. Your story ends as all stories do, in darkness, in silence, in the mud, and the world goes on